morning and welcome to Trends in the Papers on 98.3 Mainland FM. Well, it's the very last week in the month of August. This beautiful Monday morning, the 21st of August 2023. I trust we all had an amazing weekend. I trust we had a restful weekend. And there's so much to talk about this morning. Yesterday on Political Roundtable was quite an earful. I hope you didn't miss it. Well, if you did, you can always, go back and watch all of our, recorded programs on YouTube and Facebook at Mainland 98.3 FM. So many nuggets dropped along the way. All right, let's move on now. It's time for us to look through the major trending stories on the front pages of our dailies. But before we do that, we have a tradition here. Newspaper. NBA to investigate suspended varsity Don over Tinubu turns to gas to improve economy. We also have a very interesting story happened just last night. Tinubu redeploys Momo from Youth Ministry to Niger Delta Affairs. That was taken from the Sun newspaper. From Vanguard, we got Cabinet. PWD threatens legal action against Tinubu over non-inclusion. PWD, that is people with disabilities. And that was taken from Vanguard newspaper. We also have here CSO hails suspension of Unical lecturer. That's also from Vanguard. Ishe shading from leader quote foodstuffs and delay. And that was taken from the Punch newspaper. And finally, we have comments. That's also taken. Was also taken. Thank you very much. Now, moving on to the major stories, we have FUAHD SAHEED. Let's see what we have for today. We're just done with stories that trended over the weekend. All right, let's get on with it. We have our papers. FUAHD.
Yeah, good morning, Sandra. How are you doing?
I am well, thank you very much. Thank you for joining in. Let's start with the Guardian newspaper. The major headline there, Niger coup and economic sanctions of the Guardian newspaper. So just very quickly, 40 billion naira lost in 3 weeks. Rice price soar from 30,000 naira to 55,000 naira per 50 kg. Border closure splits couples and families. Reject war option against Niger, stakeholders say in final rush. So ripple effects of economic sanctions on the Niger Republic are rocking at least 7 Nigerians, about 8.5. All right. So many, information to get of this one. But then, consequently, prices of locally produced rice and other products have appreciated in the border towns because smuggling and other cross-border trading have been halted, worsening economic conditions of residents. FUAHD.
Well, it's always the usual thing. When you have a case of border closure, the communities that border the other country feels the pain the most. They are the first to be affected by any form of border closure because the reality is that you get a lot of cross-border trading. If some of them will have relations on the other side, for example, our former president, our immediate past president, I've said it several times that he has relatives on the other side of the border in Niger. And, if you understand the workings of border communities, you understand that, in fact, the economy of those communities are tied to what happens along the border line. Even in the southwest here, just imagine you close the borders with Benin Republic. The first to feel it will be people of Badagry. Decision making. Traders have their goods. So, but again, this is what comes with this smuggling people here, and there will be a lot of illegal border routes that people can use, but it's going to be at very heavy cost. It's becoming more in 3 years to come up with that 3-year timeline, saying that look, eventually to thing, but now they allow them. But again,
Lake R, Kebi, Katsina, not just Niger, there are other countries as well, some other francophone countries. Like that on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper. Let's keep moving now. We also minister last night after just an hour after political roundtable that things have changed.
Well, there are 2 ways to look at the basically are saying that look, this shows that the presidency is not prepared, that there's so much disorderliness. A lot of the president are saying that look, the president is just listening to them. Because one would think that look, less than 12 hours to inauguration of these new ministers. Again, we are seeing redeployment. Sandra, if you remember yesterday, Sarkozy said something. He said, look, this minister designate may not sleep. They did not sleep for the whole of yesterday. because anything can happen. He was still saying it on political roundtable even before this update came up. And just when we left the studio after political roundtable, we got this update that ministers have been redesignated. And I was like, just as if Mr. Curtis was saying something coming. But again, let's not stay with the news. We talked about Niger Delta. It's from those states, so that's a Niger Delta state. So maybe the president was listening to the voice of the people that, look, if you want to have a minister for youth, it has to be a youth, somebody we can say, okay, is a youth who can really understand the psyche and psychology of the youth. We're already hearing speculation, Sandra, that Dayo Israel may eventually take that one. I'm sure you know Dayo Israel.
Yeah.
But again, it's just still all speculations. Nothing has been said yet on that one. It's still pending, Minister for Youth. But Momo moves to Ministry of Niger Delta. Initially, was omitted. The president had not appointed anybody before for Ministry of Niger Delta. So the thinking was that we'll not be having a Ministry of Niger Delta. So maybe he listened to some people in Niger Delta to have made this decision. Then we have Boyega Oyesola, who was supposed to be Minister for Transportation. He's now been moved to Marine and Blue Economy. That's Boyega Oyesola, the former governor for sure. His wife, Honorable Bumi Tunji Ojo from Ondo State, has now been moved to Ministry of Interior. Yeah, Interior. So you have Saidu Alkali, who is now going to move to Ministry of Transportation. And then, again, there's still a lot of silence as to who is going to become the Minister of Petroleum. People have said that the president wants to keep it to himself, but he has not said that. But from what we are seeing, there's no Ministry of Petroleum again. What you now have is Minister for State for Oil and Minister of State for Gas. So it's now oil and gas, two ministries under the Ministry of Petroleum. So that's what you have. But again, we are waiting for him to announce who will become the Minister for Environment, which has been reserved for somebody from Kaduna State. So that's pretty much the new update as far as minister designates are concerned, and of course this issue of portfolios. But again, whether it's a guesswork, whether the president is having a rethink, whether he's listening to the people, or he's just a bit confused about what to do with ministers, we are waiting for him to swear them in, and we're expecting them to start work immediately. It's been a one-man show since President Bola Ahmed Tinubu became president. So now he has his ministers to work with when they are sworn in today, and then we can see proper governance starting to happen in the country.
Well, amazing. Thank you very much, FUAHD. That's aptly put. More details on page 2 of the Guardian newspaper, as regards the reshuffle of the yet to be constituted cabinet, but that should happen today. And moving on from that story, we also have here, Mr. President, no justification for bloated cabinet. What? Is the cabinet bloated?
The bloated was Sandra. I think yesterday we got it in the news that on housing allowance alone for this minister.
We can barely hear you. Could you move a bit?
Can you hear me now? Hello?
Hello?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, but it's very distorted.
Okay. Is it better now?
No, I will try to reconnect with you, or I will hold on with that particular story. It sounds like an interesting one. You're listening to Trends in the Papers on Mainland 98.3 FM. We're looking through the major trending stories on the front pages of our dailies. We're still on the Guardian newspaper, and we're looking at this story. Mr. President, no justification for bloated cabinet. So despite pleas and admonitions for a lean government to reflect the distressed state of the economy, reduce recurrent expenditure and associated cost of governance, President Bola Tinubu has gone ahead to nominate a 70-man federal cabinet made up of 48 minister nominees, 45 of whom have been screened and confirmed and also awarded portfolios. And these are in addition to more than 20 special advisors who are reckoned to be of cabinet status. There are others as well. And by the time the government is fully formed with agencies, departments of government fully constituted, Nigerians might be welcoming the largest bureaucracy yet since 1999. And the Guardian is saying this will be a big disappointment. Over to you, FUAHD.
We might be having more than 48 ministers. I'll tell you why. Yesterday, from sources, different sources, we got the information that Minister for Youth will be going to Dayo Israel. Because again, there are 3 pending positions. we have the Minister of Environment, which is reserved for Kaduna State. The Danladi man from Taraba State yet to be confirmed. Something has to go to Taraba State. And then you have Stella Okotete from Delta State. Unless Stella Okotete is dropped. But if those three would be eventually accommodated as ministers, and then that usually is also to make the list. So we may be having 49 ministers, or even 50, because there are a lot of political considerations that have gone in speed. There's still a lot of lobbying going on. You know, the Southeast, if you remember, the Southeast is still complaining that, look, why just give us 5 ministers? We should get more if other regions are getting more. So don't be surprised if we are going to get more than 48 ministers eventually. The window is still open. It's not a closed market yet. Sorry for the choice of words. Because there's a lot of trading and in-trading going on, political trading. That's why I mean the word market. So we're still going to see what happens eventually. 45 confirmed. Those ones will be sworn in today, but the list will well go up. Now, yesterday we got the report that, look, in 4 years, housing allowance alone for the ministers is going to go up more than 1 billion naira. Just housing allowances. Look, let me tell you, for each of the ministers, new vehicles will be supplied to them, whether anybody likes it or not. They're going to get new vehicles because they're also going to have their own special advisors. Offices will be provided for them. I'm sure some of the offices will require new furniture. So there's going to be a lot of expenses that the government would have to get with these ministers, special advisors. If you have seen the convoy of a minister, Sandra, you understand where I'm coming from. The average ministerial convoy doesn't have less than 10 cars on the normal day. Security operatives, their ADCs. So a lot goes into these things. And now that we're in the era where people are thought that we're going to be cutting down the cost of governance, here we have an over-bloated government. But people will argue that, okay, let us even say we're going to have these smart ministers, special advisors, but if they can perform and transform the lives of Nigerians, if they can bring good governance to Nigeria, it will no longer matter if the people can see the dividends of democracy and good governance from these guys. So, but again, it's an over-bloated government, but maybe our performance will make Nigerians keep quiet at the end of the day. Maybe.
Well, as reported here, apart from allegations, the president owes to certain party. Sorry, apologies for that. Apart from obligations the president owes to certain party members, there is also a warped sense of entitlement on the part of others, such as when exigencies do not support a profligate and expansive administration, as the current move prescribes. The system is wired to admit overindulgence. So, as it is now, what they're saying is the president ought to know better. Everyone is aware that the country's debt to revenue ratio in 2022 was 80.6%, whereas the World Bank recommended 22.5% for low-income countries like Nigeria. So with scarce revenue that is being expended on debt servicing, while more is being borrowed, there's barely anything left to take care of capital expenses, such as fixing dilapidated infrastructure, building sustainable health and education, as well as having savings for tomorrow. So, there's a whole lot to read from this. It's quite an interesting one. It's the editorial of The Guardian. You can get it on page 16 of The Guardian newspaper. The president, Mr. President, no justification for bloated cabinet. Let's move on now, still on the front page of the Guardian newspaper. I've been looking for this story, and here it is. Condemnation trails rowdy distribution of palliatives in Lagos. Wow, that was for you. It's okay. Yes, as it is now, there have been stories coming in as regards the distribution. But then, condemnations yesterday trailed the beggarly style adopted by chairman of Shomolu Local Council, Abdul Hamed Salau, in distribution of subsidy palliatives in the council at the weekend. So, in a video that's gone viral, the council boss was seen dishing out the palliatives without decorum. And as it is, the crowd at the venue allegedly came from different parts of the state, including Oshodi, Mushin, Egbeda, Mowe, Bafo, to collect packaged rice, beans, and gari. Well, generally speaking, FUAHD, what would you say about as regards the distribution of the food items, palliatives, however it is that we want to use it.
I've never really supported the idea of distributing food items. I'm against it completely.
Okay.
I think the only areas or in situations that you can see or that becomes sensible to distribute food is when you are in a war situation, or maybe there's a natural disaster, you have to evacuate people, and it was going to be a temporary measure to just get people living their lives. But when you have a country that is not at war, there's no natural disaster. Then you have situations where people are now treated like internally displaced people. The problem with governance. We have said that, look, this was going to be so untidy, it was going to be disorganized, it was going to be fraught with racketeering and corruption. And that's what we are saying. The scenes were not very good. Yeah, it's a viral video.
Yeah.
People were being treated like beggars, like what you call imaginary. The booths were being thrown at them. It was complete confusion. And nobody will be able to take stock of what happened. At the end of the day, the man will say, look, I sent the number of bags, and so be it. Because who can actually evaluate what was done there yet? So it's unfortunate. That was why some of us were completely against it. That, look, this was going to be money for the boys, money for political cronies, party members. And that's what, yesterday we said it's a political roundtable. In fact, Dolale Koni is an APC member. He said it yesterday that, look, if you give 2 bags of rice to a politician to share, he will keep 1.5 bags to himself and share bags to the people. That's the nature of the Nigerian politician. No missing words about it. It's unfortunate that Nigerians are now being treated as beggars. Look at the report. The beggarly nature by which the parties were distributed. Nigerians are not beggars. They just want a good life. They want a system. They want a situation where they can live their normal life. If you're an hairdresser, you can do your job and feed your family without having to wait for government to give you food. And I said it on a particular show, Sandra. If you have been reduced in Nigeria now to a point where you have to wait for government to give you rice to feed, Sandra, it's most likely you don't have kerosene or gas to cook that rice. If it has gotten to a point where you have to wait for government to give you rice or beans before you can feed your family, I'm 100% sure that when you get that rice, you may not. I'm talking of the real poor. Sandra, you may not have the money to buy pepper, to buy egg. That's even if you're going to buy egg at all. Compared of kerosene and gas to cook that rice. And then after you give rice, you say, what will happen tomorrow? What will happen next tomorrow? You continue to give rice? So, again, it's unfortunate that we have found ourselves in this situation, but I think that's the way our politicians see us. They don't rate us. They don't see us as anything. And we can cry from now till tomorrow, they'll still do what they want to do. Beg, steal, or borrow, still about their own personal interest.
Well, from the national president of Huriwa, national coordinator, actually, reacting to this particular one, Emmanuel Oubiko, Human Rights Writers Association of Nigeria, said, first, how did the president conclude that 5 billion naira is all that the poor citizens would need to reduce the hardship inflicted by his thoughtless withdrawal of fuel subsidy? How did the president assume that there are an equal number of poor households in each state of the federation that made his government distribute equal amount of money as palliatives? The entire issue of palliative is a massive scam. It is unfortunate, regrettable, and outrageous. The story is on page.
How do you give 5 billion to Lagos State and you give 5 billion to Bayelsa? You give 5 billion to Lagos State, you give 5 billion to Osun State. It's going to eventually be money for the boys, Sandra. Because I can tell you, most of you governors, you see, and that's why the governors want to hijack everything. When the $800 million loan came in, they questioned the social register. A social register that they were part of, because they just want everything to be in their control.
Well,
it's unfortunate.
More details of that on page 12 of the Guardian newspaper. And finally, from the Guardian, now we have Forex crisis. Worry over policy inconsistencies as CBN brings back BDCs. So, we have here, policy inconsistencies of the Central Bank of Nigeria continued unabated at the weekend with the reinstatement of Bureau de Change operators in the bid to stabilize the foreign exchange market. Indeed, bringing back the BDCs can help increase the supply of forex in the market, which can also help meet the demand for foreign currency and potentially ease pressure on the exchange rate that had been in a roller coaster this past few weeks. So with this new arrangement, CBN hopes to work with the BDCs to help to formalize forex transactions. FUAHD, some 2 years or so ago, I think was it e-naira or so, there was the policy that came from the CBN as regards them, where there was this issue with the BDCs and we had to clear all of them off. But here we have now that, the CBN is now trying to reinstate the BDC operators back in to save the forex scarcity. What are your thoughts?
Sandra, again, it goes back to wider consultations, proper consultations before policies are implemented or before you come up with a policy. And that's what some of us have been saying. Whether it's on the subsidy removal or floating of the naira, the consultations were not done. It was just what you can call a knee-jerk approach to implementing a very serious policy as floating of the naira and removal of subsidy. And that's why you see this back and forth, the confusion, the inconsistencies, policy somersaults. Because the president did not consult enough before taking those decisions. One would have thought that, look, the president would have engaged the stakeholders, call people who should know, probably even form his cabinet before taking some of those decisions. As it means that some of these ministers are going to come in now to meet the chaotic situation. And you're going to be cutting and chopping, trying to adjust. And look, anybody will tell you, anybody in the business world will tell you that one of the things business owners and investors don't like is what we call inconsistencies in policy. Because your investments are tied to a lot of the issues of the government. Today, the staff is something. Look, if you remember when GSK was going to leave, if you read if you had read what they wrote as the reason why they are leaving Nigeria, one of the things they highlighted was policy inconsistency. Apart from the fact that there was energy cost and all of things, they said, look, we are leaving the country because there's too much policy inconsistency affecting our business. And if as a country you are talking of foreign direct investment, those are the things they will be looking at before they come and put their money in your country. In one breath, you are saying this. In the next moment, you are saying this. And their investment is tied to your decision because investments or business don't run in isolation. One of the major things that affect business is the policies of the government. And when you become so inconsistent with your policy, investors look at you and say, hey, let me go to a country that has a more stable approach to running a business. If you understand what I'm saying. So again, the BDCs are back after they've been removed before. Because again, I think the CBN is looking at the fact that, look, they have the $3 billion now that NFPC has provided. They need to route it to the people. But again, it goes back to the inconsistencies of government and why government, everybody who is president, should consult widely before taking decisions.
All right. Well, more details of that on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper. And that's all we're taking from the Guardian this morning from Trends in the Papers. Yes, it is to Mainland 98.3 FM. You're listening to the paper review show, Trends in the Papers. And now we are moving on to the Punch newspaper. I have FUAHD SAHEED via the phone line giving analysis to these stories. The major head story on the front page of the Punch. Federal government prioritizes economy and security as ministers take oath today. And the riders to that, President's 8-point agenda to guide appointees and minister complete documentation at SGF office. Tinubu renames Environment Ministry, appoints Niger Delta Minister, reassigns Oyetola and others. Well, we've taken a bulk of this story, but let's see what the Punch has to report. First, we start from page 2. As regards the ministers are looking at the 80-page manifesto of the Renewed Hope 2023 of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, where he listed an 8-point agenda that his administration would vigorously pursue. Top on his priority list of action plans were national security, economy, agriculture, power, oil and gas, transportation, and education. He also outlined policy options for healthcare, digital economy, women empowerment, judicial reform, federalism, decentralization of power, and foreign policy. The document also included programs on decent wages for workers, manufacturing, naira stability, and total transformation of the country. FUAHD, looking at this agenda setting and the priority list of the president, does the cabinet formation reflect this agenda setting? Let me put it that way.
Well, if you have 48 ministers with different portfolios, definitely that's enough to take care of whatever agenda the president is going to come up with. Again, we are expecting the president to probably micromanage these guys. The former minister for works and housing, former governor of Lagos State, Babatunde Fashola, and I said that, look, President Bola Tinubu will be different from President Muhammadu Buhari, who gives you the job and does not ask questions again until you go back to him. If you don't go back to him, he leaves you to do the job. But that, while working with President Bola Tinubu as governor in Lagos State, he likes to micromanage. So one would think that, look, in setting agenda, it's also going to be micromanaging his ministers. So we wait to see what will happen with how he's able to coordinate these ministers, because at the end of the day, the buck stops at his desk. The performance or lack of, the performance of these ministers will be determined by the way he's able to marshal them, lead from the front, and set the agenda from them. I don't know whether, I think Watch has the report on the state of insecurity in the north, which is the most important thing that I think we should also be talking about. Because again, we have always been talking about the economy, subsidy, well, and all of that. SNADRA, whether anybody likes it or not, the performance of the economy is on security. There is no economy that thrives in any nation with so much insecurity. There are reports, I think Punch has a report or maybe one of the papers. Look, from Kebbi to Sokoto and Zamfara State, about 23 local governments are under the control of bandits. And that's coming from people who should know, community leaders, governors, political leaders in that region. So if you have a situation where bandits are taking over in the north, which is supposed to be one of the food baskets of the country, then we have a problem. There's no economy very security. So I'm hoping that the president will be able to set agenda to secure Nigeria. We have two defense ministers. We have the Minister of Defense in Bagudu. We have Masawali as Minister for Defense. The home state, the home local government of Masawali has received controlled by bandits. I'm not sure it goes back to his community. Even him goes back to his community. So, but now that he's out of defense, we see what he's going to be able to do to bring security back to Zamfara, Sokoto, Jigawa. Niger State is almost completely controlled now by bandits from the reports we are getting. So again, we'll wait to see what the president will do as far as insecurity is concerned. The big one, the big agenda that he needs to address, and we'll see how he's going to address it.
Well, as it is now, the apologies. Well, the ministers designate have completed documentation. They've gotten their invites, and the permanent secretaries of respective ministries are to meet their respective ministers after the swearing-in ceremony at the office of the secretary to the government for further interaction with them. That's the story. More details on pages 2 and 45 of the Punch newspaper. The federal government is prioritizing economy and security as ministers take oath today. Moving on now, we also have, just as FUAHD highlighted earlier on, farmers abandon farms. 23 Sokoto, Zamfara, Kebbi local governments under bandits. That is on page 8 of the Punch newspaper. So, residents of at least 23 local government areas in Sokoto, Zamfara and Kebbi states are battling to survive as kidnappers, cattle rustlers and bandits make life difficult for them. A check by the news agency of Nigeria indicates that residents of the affected areas have been forced to migrate, enter into an agreement with the criminals, or live a life of uncertainty. A very unfortunate situation there, FUAHD. Is it too much? This security challenge is too much for the governor to handle? Or
will hold us down as a country. Not central part of it. We have situations where our farmers have to pay royalties alone, even herders, because cattle rustling is about stealing cattle from herders who are doing their legitimate business and taking their cattle away from them. It's both farmers and herders that are now facing this incident of violence and criminality in the north. And it's unfortunate, if, as been reported by the agency of Nigeria, that 23 local governments
in 3 different states, yes.
Standard.
Yeah, in 3 different states.
Standard.
I'm with you.
Yes, that's what I'm saying now. That there are states in Nigeria that don't have up to 23 local governments. Some of them less than 10. We have local governments, some states that have 14 local governments. So if you have 23 local governments under the control of bandits, So it means they have their own state. God knows, maybe they can come up with their own currency or flag. And they have a government. So that's why I said it earlier, Sandra. You can't talk about a thriving economy with this state of insecurity. There's no way. What economy are you talking about if people are not secure? They can't go to their farms. They can't live their normal life. Farmers are banning their farm. Okay, when the government talks about food security for Nigerians, how would it happen with security? So the president has a lot of job on his hands. And that is why some people are questioning why he may want to be keeping the Ministry of Petroleum to himself. With the number of jobs he would have to attend to, the number of things he has to attend to. Why would he be holding on to the Ministry of Petroleum? We tried it in the past. Because it has not been officially announced. But the reality is that since he has not appointed the Minister of Petroleum, it's most likely that he wants to sit on that ministry. Maybe not on official capacity, but as a supervising minister. Why? But we started doing Olusegun Obasanjo, it failed. During Buhari's regime, it failed. Why would you want to have a repeat of that? Because the president had a lot on his hands. If truly he's going to be micromanaging the minister, as said by somebody that worked with him in the past, he needs to understand that there's a lot. Insecurity in the north has become a big issue. In the south, it's not any better. It's not as bad as what we have in the north. I must say that he needs to have a good idea, a complete direction on what to do about insecurity in the northwest and north central of the country. It's also coming close to us, Sandra. Because if bandits are already disturbing people in Niger State, Niger is not anything far from Kwara State. We need to be careful.
Well, as it is now, the issue of insecurity is quite widespread, especially in the northwestern part of the country, as already seen by the deployment of the military in those specific parts. But as the federal government is prioritizing security, maybe we'll see something different, going forward. But then more details on page 8 of the Punch newspaper. I also have here, NDLEA recovers 4.8 billion naira drugs from wanted billionaire's Lagos warehouse. That's interesting. The story is on pages 4 and 5. The wanted billionaire, and then he had drugs in his warehouse.
I hope the evidence will not be destroyed before we see a prosecution of this person. It's nice to, there's this Korodu situation where,
they burnt it.
Drugs are seized and destroyed, so. Okay. Again, I think we still in this business, drug peddling, and I just feel our youth, Sandra. I feel for our youth who take these drugs, who do all manner of things. They have different things, different names of different things they try just to get high. But I fear for their future, especially when some of them eventually get to the age of 40 and above. What will happen to their organs? The way they are treating their organs, taking all manner of substance. I just fear for them, really.
Well, that's hence the drive to try to, eradicate it if at all possible. All right, but then NDLEA seems to continue to work even with the suspension of its chairman. You wanted to say something?
I wanted to talk about the Naira Marley issue because people question when the video. Sorry. The picture of Naira Marley and Marwa, the picture of the NDLEA came
They
up.
say he came to greet them.
No, what he said basically is that he's not their ambassador. That basically they brought him in and are trying to reorientate him so that he can also take the message to his followers, his fans, to desist from taking drugs. So basically what he said was, I came in for a form of orientation and counseling. So that again, if his followers now see that, my Marley no longer takes weed or abuses drugs, they can take a lead from that. So wait to see if we'll never see videos or pictures of Marley taking weed and his followers will take a lead from that. So he's not the ambassador, he came in for counseling. So wait to see the results of that counseling from NDLEA.
So it's more details on pages 4 and 5 of the Punch newspaper. Also on pages 4 and 5, we have miscreants traders take over multi-million naira Lagos bus stops. That's also on pages 4 and 5 of the Punch. Well, that's all we can take from the Punch newspaper. Let's quickly run through the Nation newspaper. It's quite heavy. Don't worry, it's not much of news. It's just congratulatory messages.
Congratulations to Minister.
Yes. It's just congratulations, congratulatory messages
So
to
ministers,
ministers designate. Yes, on their
yeah,
oath taking today. That
appointment.
it's,
Yeah.
it's all right. It's okay. That was an interesting one.
Do you have anybody to congratulate on that list?
Yes, FUAHD.
I'm not on the list.
Well, let's keep moving now. I have here now the Nation newspaper. This is still trends in the papers on mainland 98.3 FM. The major headline, Niger Delta. And we have here Alkali Tunji Ojo, Lokpobiri Ekpo affected in minor shakeup. Abuja agog for ministers' induction. Well, as expected, it's going to be an interesting one.
A lot of Ashwebi and things to happen.
Hotels will be booked and locked down. Everything's party, party no stop. So many things happening in Abuja today, Monday morning. That's interesting. All right. Well, moving on, we also have here on the front page of the Nation newspaper why bank CEOs were barred from foreign trips. And we have here the Central Bank of Nigeria barred bank chief executives from leaving the country between July 5 and August 15th, so they could be reached to answer questions on the foreign exchange crisis. That's
Forex. What happened?
And so that if you don't ask them questions, they'll be available.
Well, it's okay. CBN is a regulatory body, so if that's what they want and that's the thing they think would help, so that these CEOs can answer some questions as to what happens to forex supplied to most of the commercial banks. Because it just took that people mopped up the entire money. I'm telling you, it was as if there was a complete mop-up. Suddenly, dollar became, the scarcest commodity in Nigeria. People are saying that, look, the mop-up of the dollar, Sandra, is not completely far from the handwork of politicians. I'm telling you, that's the report we're getting. That most of these politicians, what they simply do is that when they get their cost from the national case, and I say politicians now, you lump up everybody can choose what I'm trying to say. They just change the money to dollars. So they are the ones running after the dollars, not even ordinary Nigerians or business owners. But there's a lot of money to share now amongst politicians, and they don't keep that money in naira standard. They keep it in dollars.
All right then. As it is now, just as you've highlighted, we're dispensed, hence them being barred from foreign trips until they could answer questions as regards forex card stay adherence. The nation,
today,
I forgot, but then we also have a splinter group of Odua People's Congress (OPC), New Era, has urged the federal government to relocate Kwara State capital from Ilorin to a neutral ground to allow for an unfettered celebration of Isheshidi. FUAHD.
That will be for the government to sort out. I really don't have any comments on that. The reality is that it's a secular state. People are allowed to practice their religion the way they want to practice it. In that, the constitution guarantees freedom of religious association in different parts of the country. So the issue of Kwara State is a very sensitive one, especially when it comes to Ilorin. Because it's not the whole of Kwara State. People think that Ilorin is not the only part of Kwara State. There is Ofa. There are different. There is the Borno side, Maro and all of these areas. So it's just about Ilorin. Ilorin is the problem now because Islamic clerics and even the emir saying that, look, as far as Ilorin is concerned, they don't want anything idol worship or paganism or any form of whatever you can call it. As far as Ilorin is concerned, they feel it's like an emirate, an Islamic emirate, and that's the way they want it. But there are people who think that, look, if there's anybody who wants to share in Ilorin, they should be allowed to practice their religion. So there's been a lot of back and forth between the Sheshe people and the Islamic and the Emir. The Emir simply controls the land and whatever he wants as a religious practice should succeed. So, but again, I think the government has to be a bit careful of the way they handle this issue. I think ultimately it has to be about the peace and security of the people that should be paramount to them.
All right then. Thank you very much. FUAHD. Let's move on now. Finally, we're looking through Vanguard newspaper. Just give us a few more minutes. We'll be through with trends in the papers, and then by 8:40 we'll come back for Milan Focus. that's the part
The
where
line is already buzzing, right?
yes, that's the part where you get to be a part of the conversation. But for now, let's just look through the stories, giving analysis to the story, reviewing the stories, and then by 8:40 we'll come back for Milan Focus, where we pick 2 or more major trending stories, and then we can carry the conversation on further. Now let's look through Vanguard newspaper. Niger, ECOWAS rejects junta's 3-year transition plan. And the writer says junta warns against foreign intervention. Talks between ECOWAS and junta yield little result, says official. Says deep divisions exist within presidential guard. Notes majority of soldiers at presidential complex will flee if ECOWAS attacks. Pope calls for peace in coup hit Niger. And the story is on page 5 of Vanguard newspaper.
Just 1 minute. 1 minute, Sandra. That was how Babangida started. He came in, I'm going to spend 3 months or so, later 3 years. He spent 8 years before he eventually stepped aside. He didn't even want to leave. That was why he stepped aside and gave it to Shonekon, so that his other crony can just push that aside. And then we go the chaotic, extremely corrupt Abacha era for another 5 years. Even Abacha did not want to also hand over power. For the time he wanted to transform into Agbada, don't be surprised that General Tiani of the game, after the so-called 3 years, he now want to transform himself as a democratic leader, or even extend his term. So that's what happens to these military guys. But again, ECOWAS should have to deal with that.
Thank you very much, FUAHD. Now, finally, I'll just take these 2 stories together. The first is old age poverty to increase as pension coverage stagnates and population rises. And we have here only 16% of workers have pension protection. Less than 5% of entire citizens covered. Analysts call for more creativity in pension products design. The fact that we have, old age poverty, you work for so many years and then you're ready to rest, and now you have to wait and wait and wait for a pension.
There's no pension plan for you.
That's unfortunate.
Even for people who have pension plans, there are issues with the pension arrangement. We're even talking about the fact that more than 80% of Nigerians don't have any form of pension plan arrangement. That's what we are saying here. That's what the report is saying. Sandra, on Saturday, on the Yoruba version of the People's Right, we interviewed drivers of BRT in Lagos. Several drivers driving the BRT buses in Lagos. They say they wear the Lagos State uniform. They know that they wear the Lagos State uniform, but their salaries are paid by somebody else, another consultant who is not a Lagos State official. And look, as they are driving almost 8 hours every day, carrying people to different parts of Lagos, there's no pension, no benefit, nothing that is accruing to them. That's the unfortunate situation of most Nigerians. How do you wear the uniform of the state government and you have you are not even recognized by the government?
Right.
Salary is being paid by a different consultant. A lot of nonsense going on. Even in Lagos here.
Thank you. All right. Well, that's
why you see the BRT drivers being reckless on the road. That's the reason.
Well, that's all we can take for this morning. We've run out of time. The last story, just above Vanguard newspaper, brutally frank. Many governors wealthier than their states. And that's from Chief Edwin Clark's autobiography. Yes. Well, the story is on page 10 of Vanguard. We'll take a short break now. We'll be back by 8:40 for Mainland Focus. Mainland Focus is the part where you get to be a part of the conversation. This is Mainland 98.3 FM. My name is OMOBOLA Sandra, and I have FUAHD SAHEED via the phone line. Stay with us. We'll be back by 8:40.
You're listening to Mainland 98.3 FM.
The Broadcast Art Institute Supplementary Admissions 2022-2023. Few vacancies exist in the Departments of Broadcast Journalism and Multimedia Technology for admission in the 2022-2023 session. If you scored 100 and above in the 2022-2023 UTME and have 5 relevant credits and have not gained admission, you can change over to the Broadcast Art Institute Lagos for National Diploma in Broadcast Journalism and Multimedia Technology. The Broadcast Art Institute is accredited by the National Board for Technical Education (NBTE) to offer national diploma programs in broadcast journalism and multimedia technology. You can visit our campus at number 38 Odofin Street, Igbogbo, Ikorodu, Lagos, or call the following numbers: 0806 149 9992 or 0703 713 1166 or 0816 587 1415.
Hi, darling. How have you been?
I've been so busy, Granny. Well, Friday, I went on a field trip to see gorillas in Rwanda. Then, I slayed a few dragons with my friends. On Saturday, I watched football game in London live with my brother. And then...